Hi, everyone. If everyone can settle down, we're going to get started soon. Thanks again for joining us at the 2024 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference Competitive Advantage Talks presented by Kager, also known as the Craft Analytics Group. My name is Sebastian Gonzalez, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. It's my pleasure to introduce the presentation, Revolutionizing Sports Media, Ultra-High Resolution Immersive Capture and Emerging Tools for Broadcast TV Production, presented by COSM. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Devin Pullman, Chief Product and Technology Officer, to the stage.
All right, you guys hear me okay? All right, so we're going to get talking here quickly, hopefully cover some fun topics. And really, let me grab my clicker. Really going to dive into some of the deep details of not just, we're a multi-sided business. We are a leading immersive technology company. You might have heard about our COSM venues that we're opening later this year for live sports, bringing in NBA, UFC, NHL, Premier League into our venues as a live sporting experience. But to these ultra-high resolutions for our venues, how those also add value to other players in the ecosystem. And not just that, how we can also tie in things like the player tracking sports data piece and create experiences that really drive a lot of value for broadcasters, leagues, teams, et cetera. So let's start with really kind of what do we mean by immersive capture, right? Versus a typical capture setup where it is an operated camera, whether that is somebody physically operating the camera, or a mechanized pan-tilt zoom, capturing, say, that HD or 4K signal going to a broadcaster. Immersive technology is really focused on actually capturing more than what you need, right, in a wider field of view. So think about looking through the people at your hotel room, right, that kind of fisheye capture of everything, and how then applying basically real-time computer graphics work, you can take that image and you can de-warp it, as we call it, and create an image that looks like a regular television broadcast image, but out of something that's sampled a much larger set, right? So we typically shoot at higher resolution than what is needed, record the whole thing so you never miss anything, and then allow an operator to digitally pan-tilt zoom inside of that image. And the foundation here, really from one of the companies we acquired just over a year ago called C360, they were leaders in the pylon camera business. Our pylons are on the field at most football games, frankly, right? And there's really two types of pylons. There's the goal line pylons and the line to gain pylons. The goal line pylons are wired pylons. We actually put two cameras in them, one a fully immersive 4K sensor, and then a second lens. It's a long throw lens that allows us to, in a more traditional format, but nonetheless get further down the field. So kind of think about those two use cases as one, the player diving for the end zone from the corner pylon, and our ability to track within that frame and see their action, and as opposed to something that's just looking straight ahead, as well as something that might happen in the middle of the field, maybe that dive over the offensive line and being able to capture that as well. And then the line to gain, the distinction there is that that's really a wireless product that walks with the first down marker, sets up, looks straight down the first down marker, and has the same capability, though, to be able to capture look left, look right, look up, look down, without a camera actually physically moving, right? Again, because we're capturing that wider field of view. But what happens if we take that incredible capability, because those are 4K capture systems, what happens if we push well beyond that? And we work with some 8K camera systems, but I actually think what's really interesting today is to talk about the work that we're doing beyond 8K. And really, there's not a lot of cameras out there that push beyond 8K. And that's where we lean into a category of cameras called machine vision cameras. They're really designed not so much for broadcast usage. They're really designed for more industrial usage. And that requires us to do a lot of the work behind the scenes and take advantage of, we are already doing a lot of work to, in GPU effectively to de-warp that image. But we also take that same hardware to take advantage of these, what's debarring, basically taking the data off of the pixels in the sensor and turning it into an actual image. All the color pipeline work, not just to make sure it looks good for us, but giving controls to a broadcaster, because they have very specific tools for color and shading of those cameras, so it matches their broadcaster image, right? And the de-warping, as we talked about, to be able to create these, take these machine vision cameras and create a broadcast-ready image out of that. And the benefits really, are not just the incredible resolution, but those cameras are compact, right? It allows us to put them in very unique positions. So we touched on a little bit our goal line situation, right? But with hockey, things like goal line and rocker positions, soccer being in the back of the net, basketball being below the rim, basically attached to the stanchion, as well as at the scorer's table or TV table. Overhead positions I think is really fascinating. I'm a big fan of what we're starting to see more of, which is the social highlights of that overhead look of players. Really gives you a unique perspective. And then even things like working on the golf course, plugging into the bunker, giving you that unique view. So these cameras give us a lot of really unique positions where you otherwise would not be able to fit certainly an operated camera with a person or something that might require a full mechanical PTZ. And I'll speak to a use case on this one. I actually really love this use case, I think appropriate for this audience, because it really is actually a student-led broadcast production at the University of Texas in the Moody Center. Moody Center is where they play their men's and women's college basketball games, right? A number of other events there. And these cameras are fixed installed into the arena. They're part of the regular setup. The below the rim positions on each side, a TV table position, and then a high camera giving a wide shot. And again, all of these are 10.5K cameras capturing 180 degrees of field of view. And then we provide the tooling for the students to operate them, kind of like a video game, right? They basically have a joystick and a little jog wheel to be able to not just, look around within the frame, but actually scroll back in time. I love, one of our engineers always talks about how we control time and space, right? And we're capturing everything at all times, both as a live video and as a replay. So let's look at kind of what that looks like, right? How does this actually work? And so you end up with an image, and these are some examples from the University of Texas, where they're not just showing off the slow-mo, but the digital PTZ, where, again, these cameras are fixed positions. So even as we make movements, right, it's actually physically not moving. We're actually doing that all in software, right? And the slow-mo effects, and we can kind of look at all the different applications here from one single position, how you can give a lot of dynamism to that production, right? So this is kind of first of a couple use cases I'll talk about where we are effectively taking advantage of these positions, not just for the delivery, the potential delivery to our venues, for our cosm venues, but supporting the ecosystem. In this case, the in-house production, student-led production at the University of Texas, the broadcast ecosystem, right, from there. Now, what happens if we think about taking that not just on site, but bringing that to the cloud? Because that's one thing to give that power to the team on the ground in the stadium. Well, what about, how do we share that? How do we make that more accessible? And this is a thing that we've pioneered over the last year. We call it our CX Video Hub, right? The CX Video Hub is really about taking the power of those typically four, 10.5K cameras on site, stream it to the cloud as a live video stream. So we're talking about streaming 10.5K video, 4 of them, bringing it to the cloud, saving it off from the cloud, and then providing an interface that's web-based so that you can easily take advantage of all that capture. Right? So what does that look like? Here's an example of what we did at the NHL at the Stanley Cup Finals last year with the cameras fixed installed into the arena. And what you'll notice is not only do we have all 4 cameras with the 10.5K, all digitally pan-tilt zooming, but it's actually tied into the player tracking data as well. You'll see that virtual ice rink showing the players skate around. We work with data providers on that, right? So we bring in the SMT data, which is their data provider in this case. We work with other data providers in other instances. We marry that up because we understand the three-dimensional position of where our cameras are, where the player tracking data is, and puck tracking data, and we tie those together. And now instead of somebody with joystick digitally pan-tilt zooming around that image, we actually have all 4 cameras automatically tracking the player and puck, right? And if we step forward here, I want to give you a sense as to what that capture looks like. So we can jump into a single camera frame. We can jump into our manual mode that allows us to go ahead and zoom out and pan, tilt, zoom, and give you a sense that, again, at all times, we're capturing this full frame. So you never miss anything, right? And yet, when we zoom in and we follow a player, puck, or manually track, we can provide that image to a broadcaster or in the cloud for lots of other use cases. And it's also helpful, too, not just for having that record, but how do you actually use that record? How do you actually, take advantage of it? So another use case here is really more focused around replay, right? We've captured the game from multiple angles, and it's not just replay for, say, did the puck go in the goal during the game, but there's actually a lot of statistics gathering after the fact, making sure that we've got, or the league has gotten the correct data recorded from the event. And with this super high resolution capture, we can go ahead and go through the whole timeline, create our bookmarks, this is what we're highlighting here, and then we'll actually zoom in and we'll confirm that, hey, for this goal, for example, was it deflected? This is a one-timer goal. We'll go ahead and zoom in and see whether or not it was deflected. So we'll save off that bookmark so we can always come back to it, right? We can share with other people within our organization. And this allows us to go ahead and go step by step. We'll do that here. So we can back up 1 second by 1 second. We'll get to the pass across the front of the goal here and the one-timer, and we can start going frame by frame. So again, full control over the video in the cloud to be able to analyze for the record keeping on the statistics side, where did the puck finish in the goal. We can go ahead and take advantage of that zoom and digitally zoom in. We're starting to push the limits here, but again, that's 10.5K spread across that 180 degrees, basically. And we can see exactly where the puck jumps in there, right? And we'll zoom in a little further. So the key idea is here, never miss anything, right? Always see what's taking place. And then to be able to export those clips, right? So I created a clip, in this case, of this goal. We're going to track the player. This is the player who's going to score. We can make this a downloadable clip, and now that is ready for export for things like social media and posting to the website and highlights and clips like that. So lots of utility, not just now from the broadcaster's perspective, but now bringing it to the cloud and providing more capabilities for different people across the organizations with the teams, et cetera. Now let's jump into another use case, right? Again, like the focus that we have as a team is how can we drive the most utilization out of these cameras once we're on site? It's valuable real estate, let's try to get the most out of them. And in this case, this is something from last year's tech showcase with the NHL, working with AWS on a cloud-based production, where they're bringing all of the different broadcaster feeds up to the cloud, and we provided an auto ISO feed. Auto ISO is what you saw previously where we're tracking the players and the puck, we're using that data, but we can actually automate that on site as well. So now the cameras that are actually in the venue capturing the game can ingest that player tracking data and live provide a video feed to the broadcast, in this case, that actually then goes back to the cloud for a fully remote production, right? So let's check another box there around how this can help automate production. And then the last piece kind of ties back to that clipping we showed earlier, but I love this use case because this was actually the top performing social media clip for the NHL during the Stanley Cup Finals. This is a moment, I don't know if people are familiar with it, there was a goal where one of the players broke his stick. The equipment manager sees the player break his stick, equipment manager runs over, grabs the stick, hands to the player scores a goal about 5 seconds later, right? Nobody has a player ISO of the equipment manager sitting on the bench seeing this all happen, right? But because our cameras were there, because our cameras see everything, including the bench, including the equipment manager sitting at the end of the bench, we were able to provide the NHL, and the NHL was actually able to dig us out themselves, a clip using our camera systems. Equipment manager runs over, hands the stick, player scores, and the best part about it was at the end of this clip is the player who scored, or assisted on the goal, I should say, comes over and knuckles to the equipment manager who assisted on the goal. So again, lots of use cases where our capture can drive other pieces, right? And we think about, just to kind of summarize, kind of make sure we're telling the story completely. On-site, on-prem as we call it, right? At the actual venue, typically dealing with 4 of these machines going into what we call our time machine server. That's the capture system that allows us to kind of control that digital PTZ on-site, providing broadcast handoff, 1080p basically out of a 10.5K image. That's about 30 different 1080p images you can make across the 10.5K video, providing that as video output, but then also bringing it to the cloud. Lots of bandwidth pushing to the cloud, saving it off in the cloud, syncing up the player tracking data, and then providing an interface for the teams, the leagues, to be able to go ahead and use that video. Right. And that's really it. That's the story of how we kind of deliver from what we say couch to cosm, right? Yes, these feeds can also go to their venues, but it's critical that we're also able to deliver to other partners along the way. Any questions? I think we'll get you a microphone here.
Very interesting, thank you. I've noticed over the years of working in sport that a lot of athletes are using GoPros and glasses to actually get camera vision from the athlete. How far are we away from actually having cameras built within the fabric of the players to actually get the actual vision of what the player's doing? Or
down a certain size, but there's even smaller sizes, whether it's the ref cams that get tucked into the hats, you know, more wearable type of formats, and that's where your RF and your wireless takes then that backhauls it back to the production. I think we're seeing that today. You know, we're seeing some novel uses of that, and for us, you know, the question there is, you know, how can we do that and capture a wider field of view or higher resolution so that we can take better advantage of the video.
I was actually curious if, you know, one big thing that was coming up in my head as you were talking about some of this, like, rectifying stats and stuff is like automated or assisted official rulings during instant replay.
Yeah.
Is that a conversation you're having, and what is the appetite from the leagues and the officials organizations about that kind of technology?
Yeah, so I can't speak for the leagues, but what I can say is in this day and age where everybody's trying to build a machine learning model for automating these things, doing the player tracking, doing the skeletal analysis, you know, data is gold, right? The way that you create a better version of those models is by having better data, get more data going in. And one of the areas that we're excited about is that the capabilities of these ultra high resolution immersive cameras, seeing everything, having that resolution is really a foundational data set for driving newer and better AI models. So what we're seeing is the value of, you know, fixed position, high resolution cameras as a data set to feed into that incredible, you know, kind of innovation ramp that's taking place around player tracking, skeletal tracking, leading to automation of officiating and statistics gathering and the like.
Could you speak to about any examples of capturing high speed, let's say racing sort of use cases of this?
Yeah, so we capture right now at both 60 and 120 FPS, depending upon the setup that we're using. And you know, that is something that I think we're seeing a lot of interest in driving forward. There's two ways fundamentally of doing that. One is, you know, natively at the sensor. So opportunities and frankly, there's a lot of interest in, because we really work fairly agnostically across different camera providers, always looking for kind of the best options. And there's a number of ones we're looking at where they're natively capturing, you know, frankly up to, you know, in the ranges of several hundred frames per second, 500 frames per second, even some that claim, you know, in the thousands range. And at that point, you're starting to reduce how much light you can actually bring in. So there's a balancing act there. But the other side, aside from capturing natively at the sensor, okay, and by the way, once you do that, you're kind of outside of the broadcast workflow because broadcast is so hung up at 60 FPS. But nonetheless, that's changing with IP video. But the other side that we're seeing the innovation, and it's actually quite exciting, ties into the AI side for frame rate up conversion. And certainly, you know, there's trade-offs for doing that in software from a AI perspective. But we are seeing and frankly doing a lot of testing internally around frame rate up conversion as a capability to drive higher resolution, higher frame rates, not so much for play out at that frame rate, but the ability to then slow-mo and provide a fluid slow-mo experience, even with your native capture, say, being at 60 frames per second, wanting to play back at a quarter speed, and then having that play out smoothly from a broadcast scenario. So both are things that we are very actively looking at.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. Just a quick question. Are you guys leveraging this technology in the advertising sponsorship space in terms of, providing valuation? Because there's a lot of viewability kind of questions here that.
What was the last part? Providing what? I'm sorry.
Providing like sponsorship value for the broadcast.
Yep.
Elements, because there's definitely some application there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll stay away from specifics, but you'll commonly see these specialty camera positions sponsored. When that's usually, we're happy for the broadcasters to be able to bring in partners to drive this, because there usually are very innovative looks. And so we often see them as sponsored activations where they'll cut during say a major football game, they'll cut to it and it'll be a particular point of view brought to you by X or Y sponsor. That is absolutely a common application, and part of the innovation story here as well is it fits very nicely with a lot of sponsors.
Incredible. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and thanks, Devin.